Hello, and welcome to Songs for the Struggling Artist, the blogcast. This is episode 378. And we are coming up on 20,000 listens of this podcast. So that's kind of exciting, a nice big round number. There's like 100 and some listens to go, so it could happen around this one, although it's unlikely because when the podcast first comes out, the listens tend to hover around like 20. But they do increase as time goes by. I'm not like a podcast that people are like, oh, I have to hear exactly the latest one. People listen when they listen, and sometimes, those listens will creep up to bigger numbers as time goes by. So we'll see how long it takes us to get to 20,000. Hi, my name is Emily Rainbow Davis. Thank you for listening. And today's blog is about a television show I watched. In fact, a series of television shows I watched. 3 series. This one, it pertains to the first round of it, called Deutschland 83. But then, of course, I had to watch Deutschland 86 and Deutschland 89. So, I recommend Deutschland 83 for sure. 86, slightly less so, and 89 even slightly less so. But still, it's worth it. Once you like the characters, it will be hard to not watch the next ones. It's just that the first one is the best one, is all. That's not what this blog is about. This blog, you will hear, is about some questions that it made me ask myself, and them, sort of, although I haven't actually written to the creators of the show. So why don't I read it to you? It is called Questioning My Sense of History, or Some Historical Inquiry Inspired by Deutschland 83. Sometimes you have an awareness of the historical quality of the moment you're going through. I had a very clear sense that things would never be the same after the 11th of September, 2001. I could feel the day being engraved in the land, in our memories, in our timelines. But a lot of stuff doesn't feel significant while it's happening, especially childhood events. Even if people tell you a moment is momentous, sometimes it just all blends together in the fabric of a life. I've lived long enough now that folks are making historical period dramas about eras I remember. It is super weird to see production teams get this wrong, or to watch styles be elevated from a niche corner to a dominant style. No, 7 Lives of Lea, we did not all wear mesh, tiny tank tops, and chokers all the time in the 90s. Your research included too many promo shots from the WB. But sometimes the events are so far in the past, I question my own memory of them. I know I am often wrong about what year a pop song came out, for example, so it's very possible I can also misremember historical events. I started to think about this while watching Deutschland 83, which, you'll be shocked to learn, takes place in Germany in 1983. Now, I turned 10 in 1983, so it is a year I remember, more or less, but I had no sense of what was happening in Germany, nor east nor west, in that year. I guess I knew Nana's 99 Luftballons, which, like a lot of Americans, I preferred to their 99 red balloons, which came out in 1983. But again, I would have guessed it came out 2 or 3 years later, based purely on my perception of when I started paying attention to pop music. My perception is usually wrong about anything before 1989. Everything before 89 is all mixed up. Deutschland 83, the TV show, apparently chose to set their show in 1983 because of the music. In addition to the thematically appropriate music of Nena, the theme song of the show is also from 1983. Major Tom by Peter Schilling, which is not a cover of David Bowie's Space Oddity, by the way, just in conversation with it. The fact is, I was a big fan of a lot of the songs that were big in the West German charts of 1983. Culture Club's Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? Paul Young's Come Back and Stay? Kajagoogoo's Too Shy. So it is clear that my perception of when I started to care about pop music is way off. But I found myself talking back to the show at one point, not about pop music, but about the AIDS crisis. A woman opened her desk drawer and there was a magazine with a story about AIDS on the cover. And I said, really? In 1983? Come on. This is not because there wasn't AIDS in 1983, because I'm pretty sure there was, but because I was skeptical of it being front page news in 1983. I saw a production of The Normal Heart not so long after it was written. I feel like that's part of why I felt so sure that the media coverage was later. And of course, I'm basing this on my own blurry memories of my childish knowledge of the AIDS crisis. My sense was that the mainstream media didn't start talking about HIV until a couple of years later than the Deutschland 83 show would have us believe. I would have said there were no big stories about the AIDS crisis until 1985 or so. For me, the story loomed largest when Ryan White, a 13-year-old kid, only a year or so older than me, got HIV from a blood transfusion. But I had a sense of the disease for at least a year before that. I asked my Gen X friend what year he thought AIDS became big news in the United States, and he asked, when did the Rock Hudson story break? We understand historical events' placement in history by fixed points, by particular stories. Ryan White, Rock Hudson. I imagine that Tom Hanks will play a big role in our memories of the start of COVID-19. Or maybe he won't. We can't know from here. He got through it just fine. Anyway, this subplot of the AIDS crisis in Germany in 1983 got me very curious because things could have been different in Germany. While American media was slow to pick up the story of HIV, maybe German media was quicker. Maybe the German government was less moronic about caring for its sick. Maybe my perception is overly American, and there really were front-page stories about HIV in Germany in 1983. Maybe they didn't need a play like The Normal Heart because they were ahead of the game. I looked into it. And I learned some things. For sure, 1983 was too early for American media addressing the crisis. And it wasn't really a mainstream conversation in Germany either. However, the magazine that the secretary opens her drawer to reveal was a real magazine cover in June of 1983. So, a fair number of people were probably talking about it. Certainly, the German government's response was actually much better than the American government's response. And to be clear, we're talking about West Germany here. East Germany maintained that it had neither gays nor HIV until 1986, according to the show. The level of care in West Germany was so much higher than it was in the US, with greater compassion and a much lower mortality rate. So, while I think Deutschland 83 may have been stretching the bounds of historical accuracy with the general population's awareness of AIDS, there really was some journalism about it, and investigating it did help me understand how much further ahead in healthcare West Germany was. My conclusion. Accurate for 1983. Accurate for 1983, 99 red balloons, a NATO military exercise that nearly started a nuclear war, and the AIDS crisis beginning to destroy communities of gay men, leading to a front-page article in a magazine. Probably inaccurate for 1983, an East German spy single-handedly preventing a nuclear war, a mother telling her daughter to use a condom because of AIDS, but hey, maybe. My understanding about Deutschland 83 is that it was inspired by one of the writer's military service in West Germany when he was put to work translating Russian messages. But that work was later. In 1983, he was 13 or 14 years old, so his memories of that year, while likely better than mine, are probably a little blurry, too. Maybe it's all more accurate to the feeling of history if it's a little mixed up. I guess that's why we shouldn't use period drama as history lessons. Or maybe we can just use them as jumping off points to learn the real history. So I didn't realize until I started looking for an image for this post that that magazine actually did exist, that it was a real edition of Der Spiegel. That is, in fact, exactly the cover from June of 1983. So I felt like, oh, wow, this whole post was about how that couldn't possibly be true. And it is, in fact, true. So I figured, though, that the exploration was still useful. And I did find that there were some really interesting responses on this blog posts automatically to LinkedIn, and a couple of people answered my question on LinkedIn, which was, when do you feel like the AIDS crisis kicked off? Like, if you remember it, right? And there was a really wide range of answers. Some that was like late 80s, which is categorically late. And that's for someone who was like in the community of people who were affected. So that was baffling to me. I'd love to have a conversation with that person about it because, it's just such a different number than I would have imagined. And it's so different than the number that I guessed at. I was thinking, 1985. But then also just like the cultural differences, like different countries came upon this knowledge earlier and later. So West Germany was ahead of the game. East Germany, really far behind. And the U.S. also pretty far behind, gotta say. And it was a really interesting rabbit hole to fall down. And I think, definitely inspired by the show, because the show is taking an interesting tack on it. It's not fundamentally about the AIDS crisis. It's just one of the subplots. Ultimately it's like a spy thriller. But they took us on this interesting detour, which I enjoyed very much, but also made me confused. In any case, this whole interest in like historical moments and historical accuracy is going to continue. I've been working on a couple of other pieces that deal with a similar concern. I suppose it's because I'm starting to see a lot more things that are set in a time period I remember. Like, to me, period drama's accuracy was like, well, I don't care if they get the corset details wrong in the 1700s or whatever, because I didn't live at that time. But now I'm seeing historical dramas that take place in moments that I lived through, and it makes me bananas when they make weird choices. This one, it was just a question that came up. I actually think if you check into it, it seems to be, in fact, true, mostly. But there are others that are like, that's not actually possible. So keep an eye out for those. Those are coming. And thank you for listening to this blogcast. If you like it, please tell someone about it. Like, review, subscribe. If you have a button to push like or a star or whatever, push those buttons in your podcast apps. And if you would like to support this podcast, that would be amazing. You will notice there are no ads. I did try ads for like a week many years ago, and I made $1.38 in 2 weeks. So don't worry, ads aren't coming anytime soon, but it would be great if you felt like you wanted to support. And the way to do that would be patreon.com/Emily R. Davis. That's the best choice. Other choices, which, if it's the one for you, those are the best choices. That would be PayPal or Ko-fi. Those links are in the show notes. You could also do a money subscription. I know that's not what they're called, but a paid subscription, I think they call them, on Substack, if that's more your thing. And if there's a place that you like to support people that I have not mentioned, let me know and I'll get on it. So, yeah. What song am I going to play for you? Well, the choice was fairly obvious. It was either going to be the theme song from Deutschland 83, which was a song I hadn't heard before and now think is really cool and I enjoy it very much, or 99 Red Balloons, which I thought I had done before because I definitely remember trying to practice it, but I guess I have not done it before, and I will not do it this time either because I'm doing Peter Schilling's Major Tom. Because really, it's the theme song for the show. It's of its moment, very much. So, what to tell you about it? This song is it's in English, and the theme is also in English. But it was a hit first in German, and then the guy who sang it, Peter Schilling, did an English translation, and I think both of them were hits. On Spotify, the German one is about 5 million listens more popular than the English language version, but I think they are both quite popular. It was a hit in a lot of places, not so much in the United States. I think a little, it came here, apparently. I'd never heard it before. But it did have a moment that I missed. So anyway, if you enjoy this song, I would suggest listening to Peter Schilling's version and watch his video. It is so bizarre. And then also check out the German version. If you speak German, that might be fun. I wonder if there's a difference in meaning or theme or anyway, here is Major Tom, Coming Home. Standing there alone, the ship is waiting, all systems are go. Are you sure? Control is not convinced, but the computer has the evidence. No need to abort. Countdown starts. Watching in a trance, the crew is certain, nothing left to chance. All is working, trying to relax. Up in the capsule, send me up a drink. Jokes Major Tom. The count goes on. 4, 3, 2, 1. Earth below us, drifting, falling, floating, weightless, calling, calling home. Second stage is cut. We're now in orbit, stabilizers up, running perfect, starting to collect requested data. What will it affect when all is done? Thinks Major Tom. Back at ground control, there is a problem. Go to rockets full, not responding. Hello, Major Tom. Are you receiving? Turn the thrusters on. We're standing by. There's no reply. 4, 3, 2, 1. Earth below us, drifting, falling, floating, weightless, calling, calling home. Across the stratosphere, a final message. Give my wife my love, then nothing more. Far beneath the ship, the world is mourning. They don't realize he's alive. No one understands, but Major Tom sees now the light commands. This is my home.